there were secession movements before the Civil War, right?
Yes, there were secession movements before the Civil War, particularly in the South. In fact, there had been threats of secession from various states throughout the history of the United States, dating back to the early days of the Republic. However, it wasn't until the mid-19th century that secession became a serious issue, as tensions between the North and South over issues, such as slavery and states' rights, grew more heated.
Southern politicians weren't really concerned that Lincoln would abolish slavery, as Lincoln and other Republicans made clear that they would do anything to preserve the Union, even if it meant allowing slavery. They seemed to be more worried that Lincoln and the other Republicans would put a stop to the subsidizing on slavery, and that's what they had a problem with.
There were certainly concerns among Southern politicians that Lincoln's election would lead to the eventual abolition of slavery. While it's true that Lincoln did not initially plan to abolish slavery in the states where it already existed, he did oppose its expansion into new territories and states. This stance was seen by many in the South as a threat to their way of life and their ability to control the balance of power in Congress. In addition, the Republican Party's platform in 1860 included provisions that would have effectively ended the slave trade in Washington, D.C., prohibited the admission of new slave states, and repealed the Fugitive Slave Act. These proposals were viewed as an attack on the institution of slavery itself, rather than just a threat to its expansion. So, while it's true that the South was concerned about the potential economic impact of ending subsidies for slavery, there were broader political and ideological issues at play as well.
They seemed to believe it would lead to the South being made impoverished.
Yes, some in the South believed that the loss of slavery would lead to economic ruin, as they relied heavily on the labor of enslaved people to maintain their agriculture-based economy. They also feared that the industrialized North, which did not rely on slavery, would use its economic power to dominate the South if slavery were abolished. Some Southern politicians and slaveholders argued that their economy and way of life were dependent on slavery, and that any attempt to interfere with it would result in the destruction of the South.